There we go, the recording started.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon all. Welcome to Recovery and Future Generations Policy Development Committee. Any apologies for absence, please?
Councillor Linda Tyler-Lloyd, Chair.
I am aware that Paulette is open to attend today, but she's had a bit of an issue with her IT system, so she may join us later. Thank you. Any disclosures of personal prejudicial interests? No. I would like to welcome all the new members. You're more than welcome to join this PDC. Matthew, welcome. And no, that's it, isn't it, with us, yeah. Right, the minutes to be approved as from 27th of April 2021, page 1, page 2. All okay? Any matters arising? All okay, guys? Yeah?
Yeah. I approve them.
Seconder?
I second.
Thanks, Leslie. Any matters arising? And then we have to approve the minutes from Thursday, the 20th of May 21. It's on page 3.
Move, Chair.
Thank you, Leslie.
Second.
Thank you, Cyril. We've had a request to move Paul Thomas up the agenda because he's got a previous meeting arranged. So if there's no objections, we'll open up to you, Paul. You're welcome. A long time no see. You okay? Keeping well?
I was just about to say, Chair, it's been far too long, and it's good to see that you haven't lost your sense of humour and charisma and charm.
Oh, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you ever so much for giving me the opportunity to provide an update on all things High Street with regard to community safety, and I'm very glad that my director and colleague Adam Hill is here because he can fill in the gaps if I miss anything as we go through. But this is something actually that I've been involved in pretty much from the outset. So if it's okay with you, Chair, if I just give you a potted history of how we have come to where we are now, with some background and some detail. I'll talk a little bit about the critical incident group, the work streams, some of the outcomes from there, and then I'd like to just focus then a little bit more on the empty shop units at the top of Davati that we are currently developing with the community. Back in, if I take you back to 2019, there was rather an unsavoury headline in I believe it was the Mail on Sunday, which identified the High Street in Swansea as probably one of the worst in the UK. And as you can imagine, the leader and the then Chief Superintendent didn't agree with that article. There were a lot of the community and ward members that didn't agree with that. So it was decided that after a visit and a walkthrough, a critical incident group would be established to look at some of the issues that were highlighted in the article, to see actually whether or not they were real issues, to identify then if those issues were there, how we would address and deal and manage with them in an appropriate way, working with both residents, the broader community and the business community. So in July 2019, the Critical Incident Group was established, jointly chaired by Adam and I think at the time Councillor Clive Lloyd. And it was agreed that the best way to approach it was to set up a number of work streams, which were partnership in nature and clearly focused in addressing and dealing with some of the issues that were identified. So initially there were 3, but we now have 4 work streams that continue to meet now on a 2-monthly basis. The first group was, or the work stream was, the criminality and antisocial behaviour, which was led by police. But again, all of these are multi-agency, multi-partnership supported. And I think the unique thing about the critical incident group here and the success that we've had with problem solving is that each of these work streams were led by different organisations, statutory and non-statutory. So it just gave a broader, different view and approach to how we maybe problem solved. So the substance misuse, drug dealing and county lines activity is actually led by Barod, the substance misuse service. And again, had members of police and local authority and other support services as part of that wider group. The street sex working and exploitation of vulnerable people was chaired and is still chaired and led by Women's Aid. And then we had the public realm, which is local authority led. Lisa Wells from the city centre, and I work with her on the public realm. And that is just the look and the feel of the immediate area and how we can address some of the issues. You won't be surprised to hear that some of the threat and risks and the vulnerabilities were around the sex workers, those that exploit them, those that come here to exploit them, the county lines activity that unfortunately we have not only here in High Street, but sadly in our communities across Swansea, and the safeguarding issues that brings with regard to young people and vulnerable people. The drug issues that are associated not only with the street sex working, but the county lines, and just the general look and feel, and some would say the neglect of the area. So the 4 groups have met, and I think probably if I just touch very briefly on sort of what the outcomes were that we decided were important for these individual groups to look at, but more importantly collectively to come together then to develop an approach as to how we were going to deal with some of the significant risks. So I suppose one of the first outcomes was that by the very nature of setting the multi-agency work streams up and having them chaired by different organisations was that it was a partnership approach to address the risks and concerns. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, we'll set up a partnership and that will deal with it. Well, I think what people need to understand is that partnerships are hard work, but if you get them right and you share risk within that partnership, they can become very, very strong and very successful in meeting the outcomes that they set and manage. I think it was opportunities for new ideas. We don't have all the answers, and the police certainly don't have all the answers. So it's about sharing new ideas about how we can maybe address and approach the way we deal with people, the way we provide access to services, and the way we just generally engage, and how we work with communities and those that are affected. So the other point was regeneration and investment. Sometimes we look at it all in isolation, and this gave an opportunity through the public realm with the partnership approach there to look at, opportunities. And I'll pick up that opportunity that came through a conversation with Paul Ralph probably 3 years ago about the empty properties at the top of High Street. I think it's with regard to the setting up of the groups, it was important for the governance structure, so it gave the opportunity for the Public Service Board to have oversight and understand what some of the pressures and demands were on the organisations, and maybe sort of unblock some of those to allow some of the work to continue. I think it was very key, as I said earlier, about the problem solving to deliver positive outcomes for individuals, but the broader and wider community. But I think probably the 3 key things for us that probably overarch all of those was that we need to work together to safeguard the most vulnerable in the community, and that is paramount, and we can't ignore that. And I think the partnership approach is the best way of doing that. I suppose the other key point for us was to provide assurance to the residents and the community and the business community that this was happening, and about how we communicate that. And again, it's about working closely in partnership to make sure that the most vulnerable, have that appropriate access to the networks that are available. And I think that's one thing that became very, very clear through the work of the critical incident group, and in particular the work streams, was that there is a very good work that is going on, but it's done sometimes in isolation. And if we can join it up, it becomes more effective, because we've got better access to the services and people understanding better what the needs of the individual are, or the community. So what we've been able to do is unblock some of the should we say the difficulties in certain agencies working together. And it's refreshing now that, you know, we've got a number of agencies, particularly working in substance misuse and providing support there, that I expect probably if you asked them individually, they wouldn't have come round a table to start with, because there were concerns again of threats to funding, and what they did may not be recognised by others as the most appropriate way to deal with substance misuse. But now we're working together in providing that crucial support for those that need it most. So those work streams continue to identify issues, risks, vulnerabilities, and problem solve.
Can I come in and ask a question?
You can, but I don't mind. I don't mind if the chair is happy for that. Then up to you, or we can come pick them up at the end.
Joe,
yeah, it's just I don't want to lose the thread of what Paul is saying.
Go on, then I'll give you way this time. But Leslie's indicated as well.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to go
Leslie first, then?
Sorry,
Joe,
it wasn't coming up on mine.
Sorry, Joe. Is it specifically about a point that Paul has raised, or Paul has opened up here?
Yeah, I just was wondering what was in it for the partners. So there must be a vested interest if they're not from the community, and of course the real vested interest in making sure that we get this right and you get this right is going to be the communities and the residents. And I'm just wondering what input they're having. It's okay telling, because we've had specific problems over here, and you know, you hear it time and time again. Residents will say nothing's happening, no one's talking to me. The only people that have been out to see our residents over well-documented cases in the last 3 months has been the housing officers. And that's it. We've had meetings. Me and Clive have had meetings with the police and housing officers and several other groups. But you know, the residents are saying, well, we don't see anyone. And when we talk about police and the activity of the police, every survey in the last 30 years has indicated that communities want to see more bobbies on the beat. We spend £60,000 on a nice flash car for police officers to drive around in, yet we can't get them to attend a break-in. Every survey, last 30 years, this is not rocket science. This is common sense. And they're going to say there's no money. Look at all the brand new vehicles. Look at the new HQ. I mean, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. Look what happened at May Hill. And again, I'll go back to what's in it for the partners.
Right, Joe, I'm sure you will have, well, as far as possible, an answer to your question. Leslie, do you want to come in at this point?
Yeah. Actually, my point's completely different. I think it would be sensible for Paul to respond to go first. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I might deflect that actually to Adam, but I you know, I can't speak on behalf of the police here, but if I deflect that to Adam, and then I can maybe mop up then some of the operational issues. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for that hospital pass.
Sorry about that.
So there's a few bits really on what Joe was saying. So what's the interest of the parties? Well, the first thing is that every partner has a role to play, and they come into this, certainly from a third sector. This isn't about finance. This is about helping communities to rebuild, or helping people that have issues or early childhood experiences that were negative. and that have turned into or been groomed into either a life of crime or difficulty or otherwise. And the third sector come together because that's what the third sector do. They do it really well in terms of supporting communities. They're here to help people with substance misuse, drug misuse, those people that are being trafficked and so on. And we have a multi-agency response that Paul's talked about in terms of the critical incident groups that work together to share intelligence, share support, share how we can help the community in different ways. With regard to the communities, I wasn't sure whether Joe was just asking or saying that they weren't involved, but I can reassure you that right the way across the board, since the critical incident group has been set up, communities have had a voice. We've had a number of open meetings where the community came in. We did a very big session at the volcano, which was widely reported. COVID has proved difficult in terms of how do we get that. However, during that brief period where lockdown was released, there was an intervention and an open session up at I forget the name. Is it Matthews Court or Matthews Flats?
Matthew Street, yeah.
Matthew Street, whereby again multi-agency approach, engaged with all the residents in and around the area, the shops in the area, people in the flats. So there's quite a lot happening, and in between that, there's regular correspondence with many of the community members up there, with the council, where we're still scoping and gathering. There's still lots of intelligence. There's lots of behind the scenes conversations that take place with multi-agencies again, where we're continuing to gather, and there have been a number of arrests in and around the area on the back of that intelligence that's been gathering. The problem is, if we make that really public, all that happens is those people that are creating the offences disappear. And actually, most of what we're doing is behind the scenes because it's linked to perhaps county lines issues or vulnerabilities. And so we can't openly tell everybody what we're doing and when we're doing it and what we'll have up in the area. As for more bobbies on the beat, that's not our call. We can recommend the police have their tactics. There is equal evidence, though, for where extra police have been put on the streets. There's a fear then that more police are on that because there's more crime in the area. So we have to carefully balance what it is we want the bobbies to do when they're on the beat and what is it. But that's for the police to decide. But if you're not happy with the policing in your area, every neighbourhood has an inspector now, which is your local link. By all means, go through to those. If not, come through to me where there's an issue. And again, we can raise it on our regular one-to-ones with the police service as we go through, or it can be raised through the Community Safety Partnership or through the PSB. So wherever that is. Just one more thing with regard to May Hill. We're still under review of what happened at May Hill, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. And we're going to have an independent review that talks and investigates that. But there is more around what happened at May Hill than the people in and around May Hill. That it should not and must not be attributed just to the local people. It was an unfortunate and terrible incident, and we will get to the bottom of what it was and why it was, and what we can do to learn from it over the coming weeks and months. I won't say any more than that, but I wouldn't want to draw any conclusions to what happened in that area that anyone's thinking it was as a result of just people in that area. That's not necessarily the case, and we need to wait for the full review before we make any further comment on May Hill. Hopefully that's picked up, I think, the 4 points that Councillor Hale raised.
Thank you, Adam. Leslie, would you like to contribute now, or would you wait until after Paul has finished?
Well, I've got a point I want to raise about this thread, and if Cyril's also about this, I would suggest bring Cyril in next and then come back to me, because I've got a different thing that I want to raise as well.
Cyril?
No, sorry. I want to make a point about this first.
Right, go on then, Leslie.
And then something else. Right.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. What I was going to say is going forward with regard to consulting or engaging or whatever word you want to use to keep the residents on board. I think one thing that we have got to get sorted as soon as we possibly can is the work we're doing on co-production, because for me that is the way forward. Because instead of talking to people after we have decided something, we make sure those people are involved in what's being decided. How better to keep up to date with what's happening than be actually involved in making decisions about what's going to happen. So for me, I know it's not on today's agenda, but I really think we have got to get to grips with getting the co-production work we've been doing into a recognised, agreed policy, which we can then apply across the whole council, every department, everything we do, everything we're going to do in the future. That's that point. If you let Cyril come in next, come back to me because I've got something completely different to say.
Chair, can I be incredibly selfish before Cyril comes in? I think probably I can bring a smile to Leslie's face when I come back to sort of, you know, telling a little bit more, because that is how I work. It may not be actually how we work across the authority, but for the years that I've been in partnership working, I've learned some salutary lessons about thinking that what I think and the partnership's right for the community clearly isn't. And I think Mandy will know that from you know the conversations we've had with regard to Bonamine, and that day where we met a number of people up there who voiced their views, and quite strong views, about the fact that everything goes on in the city centre and everywhere else is forgotten. And it remained with me. But Leslie, I hope that, you know, when I come to telling you what we've done, you know, with regard to the development of the space up there, that you will agree that the approach is a sound one, and we can maybe learn from it. But no, I do take your point. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Cyril, do you want to tap in here quickly?
Yeah, just a quick one. On sex workers, I don't know, I might be going around with my eyes shut, but it seems, you know, I go down now and again, pick the missus up, or going on my way down to the Guildhall in the evenings, and I don't see so many sex workers on the high street now, so I'm hoping that's a plus, but I still see a lot of the drug misuse and the alcohol misuse. I'm wondering, you know, same as what Joe said about policing, we need to get that sorted out, because it's not a very good, I don't have to tell you, but it's not a very good welcome to Swansea when you're a visitor coming off that train. But I do like what is happening at the top of High Street, and I think when we all get our act together and get it sorted, get it all done in the PDC, I think we'll go far.
Right, Paul, you can finish your spiel and then I'll ask.
Can I come in there? Because my point is about streetwalkers. The question I wanted to raise, I noticed there was a newspaper article a good few months back about the Swan project.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that.
Because that was, it's things, if you can help support the streetwalkers, then you will probably help, not resolve completely, but certainly address how others view streetwalkers. You know, the two, I think, is a double positive whammy, that you can address both issues at the same time. So thanks.
Okay, I think I'm just conscious, Matt. I mean, believe me, I could talk about this until probably Thursday, because I've been immersed in it. And to be honest, in just this small area of work that I'm involved in, every day is a school day for me, because working and talking with all the people that provide the services. So I don't have all the experience and the knowledge, but I can definitely answer all of the points that you've picked up on. Can what I just want to just go through is just some of the short and medium term objectives that we had, but then I think I will address pretty much everything that you've just sort of raised in the community space. So for the short term, the short term outcomes really from the critical incident group was clearly the community engagement and what that looked like and how we went about it. What we've also got to bear in mind is that then all of a sudden COVID came and everything that I do, which is very much partnership, face-to-face, sort of was taken away. So it's been difficult, but that's not to say we haven't done a lot, and I think we can evidence that when I talk about the space. So it was about identifying funding resources in this time where there is no money. We've been able actually to secure funding, and that was through Paul Relf and us identifying this space that we could develop. That space could be then used for a whole host of different services and uses, and that is to be developed with the community. It was to make sure that we're making the links, because we're sometimes not very good at making links with other areas that are developing, and so it was key to linking with the Swansea Regeneration Partners, and that's where actually when I did my first presentation about the more stark reality of what was going on with the high street and some of the issues there, that some of the partners that wouldn't have been cited on that came on board and said, what can we do to try and help and support this? The rangers, the city centre rangers, they all seem to be just in the city centre. So it was about, what can we do to change that? And you'll be pleased to hear that through this work, we now have a dedicated ranger that is on the high street, Mike Cross, which is brilliant. And he came and helped us the other day with some of the leaflet dropping. It was about then the adaptability of this space that we're looking to develop, and it's about not just making it local authority. It isn't local authority. I don't want it to look like an office or a sterile office environment. This needs to be somewhere where people will want to go and want to go again to address some of those challenges that they're facing in their lives, and they're not going to traipse down to the Guildhall or the Civic Centre and speak to people with suits and ties on. So it's about changing the dynamic and making them feel that they are welcome there. And the public realm. I mean, I agree with Cyril. It looks tired. It looks grubby. It looks, we need to change it. And I think by this space, by the traffic lights there, if we can get the commitment there from the community and an identity. And I've always said that if we can give it a name and an identity, and whether it's the blue badger or the pink crow, if someone said, oh, I've been at the pink crow, you know exactly where it is, and you know why it's there, and you know what you can access from it. So it's about enabling the community to have that identity. So some of the medium to long term, which actually now has come closer together, is that one of the things was to look at the Strand Tunnel and the closure of the Strand Tunnel, because there were significant levels of drug dealing, drug use, and criminality going on in there. And as part of the public space protection order, that has been agreed by council that we'll look to close that. So we're working with Partners, Network Rail, and I hope that's going to happen in the autumn. We've got some of our first meetings coming up to close that, and that was like an old gating order, so that will be closed top and bottom for 3 years. But working with Paul Relf and the team there, they're looking to maybe bring the tunnel back into use for something different. So open up some of the arches and maybe create space for pop-up businesses. But that's for him to discuss with you guys at another time. So if that closes, then part of our work was to look at the Jockey Street tunnel, the shorter tunnel, and that was the improve the lighting, security, and the look and feel. That will happen. And test approaches. So continue to future-proof what we're doing. So speak with the community, speak with businesses, speak with those people that are going to be affected with it, and see whether or not we're doing the right thing. So it goes back to that ownership and that partnership. Hopefully, for the medium to long term, it means that we'll build better plans that work, as opposed to throwing a hell of a lot of resource at something and realizing that 2 years down the line it hasn't really done anything. And confirm the role and identity of the street. It's only the people that live, work there, and go through there that can actually really sort of confirm what the identity of that street should be, and it's the perception of the area. And finally, it's obviously through the work streams here, it's to reduce crime and improve community safety, which is paramount. We need to have a safe environment. So what happened was about 3 years ago, I continued to go out via Carmarthen Road, and I used to sit at the traffic lights looking at these 5 empty, depressing units that have been like that for years and years. So over a coffee, I said to Paul Ralph, if we find out who owns them, can you get me some money? Because I think we've got a massive opportunity here to be able to do something like a community space. Good old Paul, he managed to find some quite significant amount of money, which has been ring fenced. It took me probably over a year to actually find out and establish who owned them, because I was sort of put from housing to corporate property. But eventually we are where we are, where we have started the refurbishment and regeneration of 3 of the empty business premises at the top of High Street, where it's the row that go from the Lamb Pub, so where the takeaway is. We have got 3 of those units. We were originally going to have 5 of them, but housing are going to relocate their district housing office because they're due to start refurbishment of the High Street flats there. So we have started the refurbishment of those 3. In the meantime, we also bought the lease for the Chinese takeaway. So we now own not only the takeaway, but the 3 units. And we, through discussions with the partnership, the critical incident groups, but more importantly through the engagement days that we had with Matthew Street, realised that there was a massive opportunity to create a community space that the community could access and use. Partners could work from there, but it would be a space that the community can shape. So we have just finished delivering last week over 3,000 leaflets in and around High Street to the businesses, the residents, the communities, the primary schools, inviting them to contribute ideas, commitment to what they would like the space to be and look like. Yes, we've got some ideas as partners, and the one thing I'm very passionate about is being able to offer and provide services that some of these people would not go to in the city centre, because one, they may get involved in criminality that they're trying to avoid, and that's where all our services are. So it's about outreach, it's about that provision and access to service. But more importantly, it's about providing a space for the community to use for activities. You know, speaking to a couple of the volunteers, it was great. We had some volunteers from the community that helped leaflet drop for us, which was brilliant, because, you know, we make new friends and we can speak about, you know, some of the concerns, but some of the good things that they share in that community. And one lady in particular said, look, you know, I've got young teenage kids and they've got absolutely nothing to do here. So through conversations I've had with the YMCA and our youth justice team, who do a lot of outreach work, is that they want to set up pop-up youth clubs, you know, and they want to run youth clubs from there of an evening where we can bring in Swansea City Football Club, the trust there, to run some sporting activities. I can bring someone in to teach a bit of carpentry, and you know, wouldn't it be great if we had young people working with the community and making some planters that could go outside, and some bird boxes and bee hotels, some benches that maybe people can use if we have a community cafe there that's a social enterprise. These are all sort of ideas that I hope will be coming from the community. So the leaflet drop took place last Wednesday and Thursday. Terrific response from people, and in fact, those people that wanted to engage, we were dropping the leaflets, were very keen to be part of it. I would suggest that the majority of people we spoke to were very positive. But like anything, you will always have people that will be negative about it and say that, you know, we're just going to attract more druggies and more this and more that, which, you know, it may be the case, but we're drawing them in for the right reason, to help them. So I've had meetings with ward members, and they are on board and are equally as passionate and excited about it as I am in seeing this get across the line. with regard to the community involvement. So we've got 2 events this week, one tomorrow, running from 10 o'clock until 1:30. And if you are in the neighbourhood, please drop in and say hello. It's basically to follow up on the community leaflet dropping. So we're inviting members of the community to come down, meet some of my team, meet partners. We've got some interesting partners that are coming with some really great ideas for projects, especially through the SCVS and Public Health Wales. They bring with it their expertise, but they also bring with it, hopefully, grant and money to help develop projects. Natural Resources Wales are very keen for a greening project there if we can find a community that's interested, because each of these units has a yard at the back that we could clear out, and we could encourage grow your own if people want to do that and be part of it. But this is very much about the community designing the look and feel of this space. You know, give it a name, give it an identity. The leaflets that went out were designed by volunteers, the colouring. It was very important that it wasn't me or anyone else. This was from the community asking the questions. So it's been exciting, it's been long, it's been hard. There's been many bumps that we've had to go over. But I just want to touch really, just before I finish, on some of the success to date, because I think it's very important to highlight that there's this very good stuff that's going to happen, and I know it will happen, and it will evolve, I think, over a 12-month period with the type of services and the community activity in the space. But I just want to give some success to date. And picking up on what Leslie said, the Swan project and the outreach work, we support them, and we've supported them through lockdown. We provided them with packed lunches when everything closed down. We sourced food for them so that they could give food to the most vulnerable that visited the van of an evening. Obviously, they then, when lockdown, then prevented them from providing that service. But we continue to work with the Swan project. And ideally, what I would love to be able to see is one night a week, the Swan project actually use one of the units to do some safer engagement work with our most vulnerable. Because at the moment they do bloodborne virus testing, sexual health, and the nurse out of the back of a van, which, good that it is, probably in the 21st century isn't ideal. And if we've got a space at the top of High Street, which is warm, each unit will have a kitchenette and a microwave, and the space therefore, I would say, more private engagement. And by the very nature of it having happened there, if we can encourage then someone to come back, there's then going to be services there which will talk about employability, which will talk about opportunity, which will talk about access to benefits that they may not have or want to have for all sorts of reasons. So picking up on the young women that visit the van, I don't know if you're aware of the Rapid Access prescription service. That's based in Devodal, and Devodal is normally only providing substance misuse support for those that have been in the criminal justice system. But the success of this was that RAPS was set up to offer exactly the same support for those that have not been in the criminal justice system. And to date, we've got 6 young ladies that have full access to support for their drug and substance misuse issues, which is a terrific result. And we've just had a confirmation that the funding is now in place for that to continue. So that's a massive success for the partnership, and in particular the Swan project in what they do. Drug warrants, I can assure you, drug warrants have been issued and will continue to be issued with those that sell or deal with drugs. And there are a number of ongoing investigations and projects that will lead to more arrests. But again, you know, I can't disclose or go into any more detail other than to say that that work is going on, and it works alongside and with, you know, that what I would call the more softer pastoral types approach that we've got. And the good news that came from this is that we now have joint engagement, joint patrols. So not only do the NSU patrol, but we also then joint patrol with the police, the NSU, so that they can address and deal with issues rather quicker than we have done in the past. Utilize social media. I know it can be divisive, but it can also actually help in mobilizing that support quicker than perhaps in the old days. So I think probably I've spoken enough. And I'm grateful for the time, and I hope it just gives you an idea of what's going on, what we're achieving, what we have achieved through COVID, which I think has been terrific. It's funded I think that the units are going to be pretty much finished-ish by the end of July. And I suppose it's working with that community to help shape that space, and some of the statutory partners to be able to work from there to provide the access to services, but also then non-statutory third sector, and more importantly, the community. You know, if there's someone there that wants to run a class of an evening, or we want kids to learn to, I don't know, go back to play board games, whatever. It's an opportunity for that space and the community to take ownership of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Leslie, would you like to come in here, please?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Paul. I think that's very uplifting and very positive, and it's good to know that so much good work is going on. And particularly if the nurse can stop having to deal out of the back of a van, I think that would be such an improvement. It sounds so grubby, and it gives completely the wrong, it reinforces the wrong side of what's happening, instead of reinforcing we're trying to help people help themselves. So that would be great if that comes off. The other thing, just slightly minor point in a way, have you asked the local residents what name they'd like to give the area?
I'm rather hoping they're going to come on Wednesday or Thursday with some weird and wonderful suggestions, and then we'll, as we live in a democracy, we can all argue the toss about it, and we'll come up with the right name.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Paul. Terry, I'll bring you in after me, okay? I should declare an interest at this point, being gainfully employed by Great Western Railways. And obviously, you know, I've got a lot of passion built around the high street because I've worked there for the last 20 odd years. And I have spoken to Paul and Adam, you know, through different forums. But my questions are predominantly around, do we use the big organisations, you know, when we talk about partners, because they do community grants, especially Great Western and Transport for Wales. Network Rail, you know, promote their community schemes and how they want to help the vulnerable in society. So maybe to touch upon them, you know, there might be a funding stream there, and ideally where they are based, because Network Rail have taken all the Maleficent again. And then with regard to funding as well, considering all the work, and I know it's Welsh Assembly, but considering all the work that's been done around those tunnels and around Platform 4 down the Strand, you know, have we once again, as with the development for the Maleficent with the Hitachi stabling of the fleet, you know, have we missed a funding source that we could have probably touched upon, you know, to support the vulnerable aspects in and around that vicinity. So really, Paul, you know, my plea to you is they promote quite widely what they do for communities. I don't see much happening in Swansea, maybe because we are not approaching them, but there is funding there. So that's the first. The second one is about the engagement with residents. Once again, maybe show an interest, because I do quite a bit of work at the community centre in normal times. And the groups that work out of the community centre have kind of indicated that they feel isolated and alone. And a lot of those groups are not going to come back post-COVID. We know that. So a question is, when we talk about partnership again, we've got so many what I would call community leaders embedded in that vicinity up around the Afod, Wanwa, end of Atty. Do we communicate with them rather than just give an open invite to everyone? Because I think they could contribute quite a bit, you know, to this. And when you say you sent out now an invite for people to meet 10:30 to 1300, what venue is that tomorrow, please?
It's, well, if I pick that one up, that it's socially distanced outside the units itself.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Okay. I just want to pick up Network Rail. We're in discussions with Network Rail, and I'm going to probably, well, I'm rather hoping that they will be funding the gating up of the Strand Tunnel, but that is to be confirmed through the meetings that we've got coming up. We are in conversations with them around, as you say, that corporate social responsibility and investment. So we haven't lost sight of that. And I hope that they will contribute going forward, along with some of the key partners like National Resources Wales. But it's been very difficult, Chair, because it's been so long getting to this point, and I'm as keen as anyone else for this to work and happen, but we've got to just be a little bit guarded as to what the expectations are and how we manage them, because what I didn't want is that come July the 1st and everyone expects that July the 10th we've got this most fantastic community space that's resourced. It's just not going to be like that to start with, and it will evolve and it will work and it will happen, and we can bring then some of the big hitters on as we progress. But the idea is that I think this is being seen as sort of a blueprint. If we get it right here and it works, then why can't we do this in and around Swansea, on a smaller scale? We talk about the big hub in the city centre, and I expect that some people think that's a great idea and others that don't. From my perspective, I know that a lot of people that if they are going to engage with the outreach and the teams up in this space than they are if they go into the city centre. There's too many threats to them, and there's too many challenges for them there. And if they can do it here. With regard to leaders, I don't know who they are, so I'll be massively grateful if people will identify them and get them to make contact. I hope that out of the 3,000 leaflets that were dropped and delivered, and that they will have hit the doormat of some of these leaders. We have had concerns from the community centre and the committee there about taking away activities that they run. In no way is this supposed to do that, or we want this to do. We want these actually to work together and benefit each other. So there are going to be teething problems, but they are not going to be ones that we can't address and work through, and we can all then go forward together.
Just to touch on one thing before I pass to Terry, excuse me. Quite happy to hear your comment. If it works well, it will be distributed across the city, because probably I speak for many. The last thing we want is to eliminate the antisocial behaviours there and then push them out to other communities across the city and in the centre of the city. So I welcome what you said there, Paul. Thank you. Terry?
Can I just, before that, I didn't say it would happen, Chair, but I'd like to think it's a blueprint for it to be considered to happen. You get me into trouble. You'll get me into trouble.
No, I won't. I'll stand by you every time. Terry? Terry, you're muted, darling. There we are. Hiya, Terry.
Yeah, consultation, participation, community involvement. I've heard all the sayings because I work with it, nearly every local authority in Wales. And yet, not one of them seems to be able to get to grips with this community engagement and community involvement. Unless, of course, it suits the authority. I think you're all aware of the term, what they use, priming a pump and turning it on and off when it suits and everything else. I can see the smile on your face. It's not that difficult. Swansea Council did it a few years ago, the best consultation participation, and that was on the stock transfer. And that's why you had a 54% turnout at the ballot. So it just gets me when I keep seeing this, because I worked in the sector for 25 years. And it happens all the time. When it suits, they come in and then they turn the pump off. You're aware of it. You're all aware of it. It's just that people don't particularly want to say it. Well, I'm getting fed up with people saying to me, we're not involved with the council. They don't consult with us. Council tenants under Section 105 85 housing got a legal obligation to consult with the tenants. on management and other issues. And this is a management issue. It might not be all council tenants, but it's definitely an issue there. And there's some experienced people out there, and one day they're going to come down at Guildhall and serve notice on the council because they failed to consult. A, you consult. B, you must give them time to digest and come up with a formal, answer to the consultation before the decision is made. That's in statute books. I don't understand why they get this problem. I'd like to pop along tomorrow night. What time is it, did you say?
Tomorrow, Terry, it's 10 o'clock until 1:30 tomorrow. And on Thursday, and I know there's a clash here with council, but it's from 4 o'clock until 7:30 on Thursday.
Yeah. And I better say it, I do know Mr. Cross. He's married to my niece.
Good job I didn't say anything that wasn't correct. No, he's a good man.
Yeah, I agree with you. But not with everything you say. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Joe?
Yeah, I only quickly, we shouldn't forget that we're dealing with now retrospective action, and we're sort of responding to events. I mean, there's clearly another department that's equally responsible, and that's the planning department, because it's obvious that really bad design and bad development encourages antisocial behaviour and encourages other forms of illicit behaviour. And before we start, I suppose, trying to correct everything, maybe we should be acting as preventative local authority. And if we could get the planners and the planning department to actually engage with the communities in a proper manner and not doing everything. So a developer should not be contacting a local authority planning department to say, have a look at this, it will make me a load of money and it will be good for Swansea. Maybe they should be encouraged, either through guidance or even through statutory instrument, to say that they have to speak to communities first. You will know, Paul, that some of the worst crime areas in bigger inner city areas in the United Kingdom have been purely down to poor planning decisions. So I'll just sort of throw that in there. You're all doing a great job. But when you can see the obvious from sitting outside some of these organisations, when you can see, I know what Adam said, but when you can see there should be more police officers. It's not fair on a PCSO who doesn't have that backing to say, I'm arresting you, I'm taking you down to the nick. You know, and I'll go back again, 30 years of evidence, 30 years of every community engagement on policing nationally in UK. This is not a Swansea problem. Nationally, UK-wide says, put more bobbies on the beat. It gives confidence to our communities. And they say there's no money. We all know that's a lie. So let's say I'm just trying to balance it out a little bit. I think really key to all this is the planning department as well. But thanks and cheers, Paul.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you. Terry, you take your hand down for me, please. Thank you. Leslie and then Yvonne, please.
Yeah, just a quick point to sort of echo what Joe's just said. That is definitely a consideration for any policy we decide to put together regarding this, the topics that we've just been talking about. It's something that we need to bear in mind when we start compiling the document. Thanks.
Thanks, Leslie. Yvonne, you indicated to speak.
Thanks. Yes, I did. Thanks, Chair. Okay, I just have a couple of questions really for Paul. When you started, you said that this was a multi-agency approach and working with other organizations. So I was wondering, because for me, most people need that multi-agency approach because funding is usually restricted. So coming together, each partner can provide a service, because people generally need, let's say you're homeless, just giving you somewhere to live isn't going to get you a job and stand you upright. So for me, working with multi-agency is quite a big thing. But I just wondered if when the units are complete, will there be the facility for those partners to have a space or a day or a desk? And I'm not talking about the big organizations like SCVS or the police or whoever, but grassroots people that the local people are used to. Will there be that sort of service that's provided? Because ultimately, when we walk away, what you need is still that community and service around you.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, Yvonne. And I think the only way this will work is exactly that. We allow that space to be used by those that may not have access to that space, can't afford, some of the tariffs that are charged for that space. But absolutely, I mean, I'll give you an example. Someone sort of mentioned that someone locally has set up a little business from home during COVID, and it's now sort of outgrown the home that they're actually running it from. And so the idea would be is that maybe this space could be offered up, for a morning or an afternoon for them to sort of run the business from there, to see whether or not it would be something that they would choose to want to do, because obviously it's a big step from running it from your front room to having a business premises and all the risk and costs that's associated with that. So definitely opportunity for pop-up. Definitely want to see, and I'd love to see, members of the community being able to offer up opportunities for others from whatever skills that they may be able to bring to that space. So yeah, I mean, there'll be some hand holding, I think, from not just us, but just services, because I think that's what we'll need to start with. But very much the aspiration, well, particularly my aspiration, is for this to be a space that the community then own, and it becomes part of their community. So there is that sense of ownership and developing it for the good of the community. So yeah, I mean, at the moment there's words, but I'd like to see those words translate into action to finally outcomes which provide support for people, but also opportunity for people just to have a bit of fun, maybe.
Thanks.
Chair, I'm conscious that I've got about 3 minutes before the demand is on me for elsewhere, so I'm happy to take any more questions, or
there's no one indicating.
No?
So
I can pick them up offline as well if anyone has second thoughts and wants to do it, and I'm happy to answer them if they want some answers. But you're more than welcome to come tomorrow and Thursday. It'd be nice to see you.
I'd like to take this opportunity, Paul, to thank you for your time. Not only here today, but for all your commitment, kind of leading the team to establish where we are today with High Street. And as you know, I've been banging on that drum for a long, long time. But I will say this, as has been said earlier, not so much of sex workers, but regarding other antisocial behaviours. I went down to pick my son up one day, I pulled in, and there was undercover police, and he actually approached me, and I was like, oh, fine. But the presence is there, and I can visibly see that there is work being done there, because I'm there 24/7. I come and go 24/7, as do 700 of us, working from Swansea. But there is a visible change there. So I would just like to say thank you, and you're more than welcome to come anytime and to give us an update, because I think we've all got a passion.
Thank you very much, Chair, for your kind word. I've taken an hour of your time, but as I said, I can talk.
No, it was a well worth hour, because I think everybody on this committee's got a passion, to work, and the aspiration is to work with the very vulnerable groups that frequent that area, for whatever reason, and the only way we are going to resolve is to work together. And I can see that starting to really stem. There we are, he's gone. Oh no, he's still there. Bye, Paul. Right, we'll go on to item 4, which is Swansea Council Employability Provision.
Hi there.
Hi there. Hiya, Elliot, you okay?
Hi, yeah, you okay? Thanks.
Yes, yes.
I've got a bit of a presentation. I think it's been circulated beforehand, so I thought we'd sort of cover employability provision, sort of give you a bit of background really as to what the employability provision looks like in Swansea Council, particularly at the moment. I think this is the first time we've really brought this to the agenda as such, but obviously we've had some positive discussions with Councillor Mandy Evans, and there's I suppose we're keen to have your input really and steer as to where we can perhaps take employability support going forward really. And there's a couple of points, sort of discussion points or key issues that we could look at as part of this meeting as well. So if I just quickly share the screen and get this presentation up. Right. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I can, thanks.
Great, thanks. And apologies, I did present this to the People PDC last week, so if you've attended that meeting also, apologies, it'll be a bit of a repeat of that. So just in terms of the employability provision we currently have in Swansea Council, for those that may not be aware, we currently operate, I think it's 6 projects now, or 7 if you include the 2 parts of Communities for Work and the new Kickstart project. Basically, a lot of the European funded projects that, a lot of the employability projects we have at the moment are European funded. And by sort of virtue of the way European funds have operated over the years, they tend to come around in sort of seven-year funding cycles. So these projects were by and large developed in sort of towards the end of 2015, 2016, and started sort of delivery on the ground from sort of 2016 onwards. And some of these projects do build upon previous projects that were sort of operating in the previous European funding cycle, which ended in sort of 2014, 2015. So, for example, Workways is a long-standing name in Swansea and across the South West Wales region. It's been something that's operated on regional footprint since 2009, and the latest iteration of the project has started, like I say, in 2016. Sorry, I should introduce myself really, shouldn't I, first of all? I'm Elliot Williams, External Funding Manager within the Economic Development and External Funding section within PLACE. I've also got colleagues with me, Nia Pugh, who manages the Workways projects within my team and the Kickstart project. And Joe Thomas is also on the meeting group as well, who works in the Tackling Poverty Service and is responsible for the Communities for Work projects. Just in terms of background then really with these projects, like I say, they were all sort of developed 2015, 2016, and by and large they're targeted based on sort of national policy and strategies and funding arrangements with WEFO, Welsh European Funding Office. They're addressing different cohorts and target groups, I guess, where there are perceived barriers and challenges for us to overcome. So, for example, Communities for Work is a project that's kind of split into 2 parts. There's an adult element and there's a NEET element. So the NEET element supports those aged 16 to 24. And then there's the adult element that supports those aged 25 plus. And that is a Welsh Government backbone scheme, as we originally called it, developed by Welsh Government. It operates across the majority of local authorities in Wales, and primarily targets those with complex barriers and those residents residing in communities first areas. Then we've got the CamNessa project, which started a couple of years later than Communities for Work, and that is again a neat project, but it's primarily focused on those furthest to reach, so the tier 2 NEETs, as we sort of classify them. They can also reside anywhere in Swansea, not just Communities for Work first areas. Then we've got the Workways Plus project, which sits with myself and the team, and that is age 25 plus project residing, so we can support people outside of Communities first areas. We've also more recently started the Workways Plus short-term unemployed project, which is again those age 25 plus, but those who are perhaps short-term unemployed, so they've not been unemployed for say 12 months plus, whereas the original project supports those who've been out of employment for over 12 months or are economically inactive. Again, we're looking at those further away from the labour market in general terms. And then you have the Communities for Work Plus project, which if anyone isn't eligible for the aforementioned projects, basically Communities for Work Plus can assist. So it's quite a complex landscape, and apologies, there's a lot of I'm talking about different eligibility for cohorts for each project. And dare I say, that's kind of the way at a national sort of policy level, and how the funding has been sort of carved up on a national level, that we've had to sort of respond to that by applying for the funds and developing projects with their unique identity then and brand, to sort of respond to that and make sure we're delivering employability provision on the ground in Swansea. So like I say, these projects are, we do work together quite closely. Yes, we've got sort of two teams, one team in social services with tackling poverty, within the tackling poverty area, and myself working in place with Workways Plus projects, but we do work quite closely together to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks, and that the right provision is targeted for the right individual. We've since sort of 2016, 2017, again, we came up with the Swansea working brand and working principle, really, which sort of underpins a lot of these projects and promotes really one entry point to all of this provision, basically, in an attempt really for us as sort of delivery managers, really, to try and make it as easy to access some of these employability projects as possible. So that within the Swansea working sort of function, there's a triage team that will handle referrals and then pass the referrals on to the relevant project and delivery staff. Perhaps worth noting that across those projects, there's the annual budget is in the region of sort of £3 million a year that we backed by grant funding, that we utilise to deliver these projects, and there's in the region of 45 to 50 frontline delivery staff across these projects, working with people day in, day out. And generally speaking, the staff are based or attached to sort of outreach venues and community hubs and community facilities such as libraries and various venues across the city. Obviously, during the past 12 months, that has been a bit more challenging. We have seen a bit of a dip in sort of referrals to various projects, although with some of our projects we have seen an increase, such as the short-term unemployed projects and Communities for Work Plus. We did see that perhaps those who were economically inactive or had underlying health conditions or shielding became disengaged from our employment projects for various reasons. But the short-term unemployed who have been impacted by redundancy or what have you were sort of picked up by our short-term unemployed projects. So yeah, generally speaking, the provision, we've got the delivery teams are very similar, I guess, across the projects. There's employment mentors available that will meet with participants to understand their needs, their barriers, and come up with an action plan to overcome and address some of their issues or in accessing employment. So Here I've just sort of outlined, just generally speaking, the type of support that's available. We can arrange for training, we can pay for training courses, we can provide welfare support through the welfare rights team, we can arrange qualifications, volunteering placements. We have a secondment agreement with SCBS, so we have a dedicated volunteer development officer. So if anyone's interested in getting into work, but they don't know whether that's a sector or a type of job that they really want to get into, or they want to try something out in terms of volunteering or a paid work opportunity, we can facilitate that. So, you know, we've got quite a good track record across all the teams of delivering employability provision over the last sort of 5-6 years, and we have a range of tools that we can utilize as well to help people on their journey to employment, like I say, such as job search support and paid work opportunities. More recently, and what doesn't quite feature on the slide here at the moment, is the new Kickstart provision. If I just cover that briefly, the Kickstart program is a DWP national program. It's a £2 billion scheme to support those NEETs with paid placements for 6 months. So that's something we've more recently secured funding for as an employer and as a gateway. So what we've been doing there is working with various businesses that we've already got a track record with to identify opportunities within those businesses to set 16 to 24-year-olds up on paid placements for 6 months. It's fully funded up to 25 hours per week through the DWP. We set up placements. We arrange with the job centre to advertise the placements and identify a young person, and then we provide some wraparound mentoring and employee liaison support for that individual as well. So the individual gets experience of working in various businesses potentially for a 6-month period, and they get a lot of experience, skills, you know, and something that they can put on the CV as well for any future job opportunities. So that's something that's been working quite well recently. And as part of that, more recently again, we've set up various placements within the council and the Kickstart program. So placements in corporate building services, waste management, and the like. Generally speaking, this is the sort of pathway that participants will sort of follow from referral to the project. We quite often, in pre-pandemic times, we'd normally have staff quite active in the community promoting the projects and what they can support, what they can offer. We have strong links with other referral partners such as DWP, Job Centre, Careers Wales, and we also have we established the Swansea Employability Network a number of years ago as well, which has 40+ partners across various agencies, including third sector, public sector, and colleges. So they often work as a good referral source to and from those projects and provision, and quite often with there being so many partners around the table, there's various I suppose niche or bespoke support that some partners can provide that perhaps fall outside our skill set as more generalist employability providers. So we'll operate in, like I say, in terms of outreach through social media. We identify people, we can engage them on the project, identify the barriers, come up with an action plan, any skills development needs, source employment, and then also provide some limited in-work skills development as well. I suppose a couple of things we've been looking at more recently, and we've discussed this with Councillor Evans, was about prison leavers. There's a bit of a gap in provision, I guess, around this, and it's something we've started to work on more recently. And my colleague Tim Moss, unfortunately can't be in the meeting today, has been quite active in trying to work with Swansea University, Swansea Prison, to see if we can put some identify the issues, I guess, around prison leavers and what provision needs to be in place for their needs to make sure that they get best start then to leaving prison. I won't go into this in too much detail at this point, but one of the other questions we had really as well is there something we can do with our employability provision in terms of supporting individuals who have informally or helped others during the pandemic? Is there something we can do to sort of give something back to those who have provided the sort of volunteering support to within their community and things like that? Is there something we can do around that? So sorry, I've talked quite a bit there to give you a bit of an overview of things, but I'm happy to take any questions or any views at this point.
Thank you, Elliot. Hi, Elliot. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'd like to ask you about the referral scheme, as to where the referrals come from, how an individual would gain a referral, and I would like to ask you with regards to vulnerable groups and vulnerable individuals who are cared for by their family, have got no interaction with what we would call the outside world, no interaction with anyone but their families. So how do we touch upon those individuals and, get them actively involved and support the needs that are put upon them? So the referrals is a big one for me. And secondly, how do we touch base with the individuals who have no contact other than what is in the concept of family or carers?
In terms of referrals, generally speaking, I think as I mentioned, there's the employability network. So there's a number of ways that people can be referred into the project, and generally speaking, I guess it's all about relationship management, relationship building with key players in the community. So we've got quite a strong relationship with the local area coordinators. So the local area coordinators, of course, aware of employability providers. So if they know workways, or they know communities work, or they know Swansea working, there's a route in there. So we're quite proactive in that regard. Staff will again normally be quite out in the community. So there's leaflets, flyer drops, all that sort of thing. Libraries know who we are. So if anyone comes through, they can sort of say to people, well, we know Rob or Lisa or somebody's here on a Wednesday or Tuesday. By all means, have a chat with him if you're looking at sort of how you get back to employment or what have you. And as I mentioned, there's the referral partners through the network. So we've kind of covered a lot of ground, I guess, in terms of who are the key referral partners with Careers Wales, Job Centre Plus, PACE, various other third sector partners, the health board, things like this. So yeah, generally speaking, there's quite a range of referral partners. Historically, I suppose quite a large percentage of the referrals come through the job centre, but in the region of sort of 30 to 40% have often come through self-referral, with word of mouth, or through social media. Particularly during the past 12 months, we've seen a lot of self-referrals then through Facebook or Twitter and things like this, as we have quite a presence there. We don't always get eligible referrals because our projects are targeted at such a specific cohort, and the funding only allows us to work with that specific cohort. But then we will make sure then that we through our network identify the right provision for them.
Just one tent. Yeah. Oh, so it's go on, Elliot. Sorry.
No, sorry, Carol.
Just one more thing before I bring other members in. Have you seen where maybe I would say rapid, because I've had conversations with young people who are telling me that they are actively seeking employment, and a lot of it's part-time, just a day or two to see them through. And to give them obviously a skill and a talent and confidence. And over the last probably 3 months, the message I'm having is that it's quite difficult to get a placement anywhere. Some are going through rigorous work trials and then very unsuccessful. So are we seeing what I would say is a rapid increase, obviously as we climb out of COVID, with regard to young people and actually the provision of placements for them?
I think what I'd say, I mean, generally from my experience, we tend to work with the in our projects we tend to work with the 25 plus, but we've certainly through the Kickstart provision, and I know through the CAMNESA provision, we have seen quite a downturn in sort of referrals from young people, the NEET group then. But I think that's in part because DWP and Job Centre Plus have brought in a lot of mainstream provision. They've set up a youth hub, so we're not seeing quite as many referrals to our provision for that sort of thing. So that's something we could perhaps look at exploring with Job Centre. But one thing, Job Centre, we have had quite a bit of success with Kickstart placement, albeit quite small scale. I think we've got 33 placements near, is it currently set up? Yeah, and actually there's quite a
oh, sorry, I couldn't be unmuted. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we just got 40 placements this week now. Yeah. So.
Thank you both. Cyril and then Terry, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Adam, I think knows where I'm going to be coming from now, because I kicked up such a fuss in the audit regarding agencies. I'm glad he's got his camera off, because I would want to see him smirking, and he goes, would these opportunities help us, council, to get lower agency staff, you know, because I'm sure quite a lot of these boys who are on agency have done, as you say, have done a lot for us, covering our workforce throughout the pandemic, and you know, we've been on the front line. So I'm wondering if there's ways of getting some of these people in, because if we've got work here, why can't we use them permanent?
Yeah, I suppose one thing we've been looking at with sort of corporate property and waste management, for example, was trying to set up a number of paid placements through the DWP Kickstart scheme initially, and I suppose it gives the young person a bit of a you know, an opportunity to try out the role, but it also gives the manager then in the service area a bit of an insight into what this individual's like, and if they can bring you know, help them develop, and it you know, it does come down to sort of service budgets and things like that, I guess. But arguably, if we had been employing agency workers, and there's the scope then to make a position more permanent, then it could, you know, we'd be sort of encouraging managers then to try and retain Kickstart, those people on Kickstart placements where possible.
Sorry, I muted myself. Terry and then Adam, please.
Yeah, I was a member of the Blair and Mice Portmead Community Development Trust, which was linked to the Communities First. And that's where they started about access to employment, and had 3 or 4 people up there from the council. And I'm going to say they did a fantastic job. They got placements with people like the Fire Authority, setting up their own business, taxi drivers, hairdressers, and those sort of things. Is that still going? Because I'm going to add something else to it, because we also got a fantastic apprenticeship scheme with amount of building workers going on, and a lot of people are employed locally on these big contracts. Are you involved with that side of
yeah, part of the service provision we have at the moment is we have the Beyond Bricks and Mortar team that work with setting up placements in construction primarily, but not just construction contracts. There's other things, that social care contracts and the like. So We have a program with Buckingham, for example, PLC, who are delivering the Arena scheme, and we've had a number of participants, in need of support and paid placements who've taken up that provision with Buckingham. So they're benefiting from some of this council investment in contracts and regen schemes. But it's linking the two things. We're investing in regen schemes in one area, and then we've got groups in need of our employability provision who have work limiting health conditions or other barriers, who are then benefiting directly from some of that council investment and contracts.
And the sad thing is, earlier on we was talking about community engagement and everything else. With the Blind and Mouse Portmead Development Trust, with the Blind and Mouse Portmead Community Association, and many others. But again, now I said earlier on about turning the pump on and off, those groups finally dissolved, which is sad, because we could have had a lot of this work regarding community involvement. A lot of it was in place, but the council decided to move it to one side, unfortunately. But I'm very impressed with the apprenticeships and the young people who was doing the work and getting people in a fire authority and their own business and taxi drivers. I thought that was excellent. And if you want to pass that on, by all means.
Thanks.
I'm in now.
Thank you, Terry. Adam?
Yeah, thanks. It was just to come back on Cyril a little bit with regard to it. I don't want to open up the wound of agency workers here. Wherever we can, Cyril, we would obviously encourage agency workers, if they were after full-time employment with the authority, to apply. What we have to make sure is that we're equitable to everybody who wants to apply for a job at the council, and not be able to give people special circumstances because they've worked for us for, whether it's a matter of weeks, months, or even years. So we have to, choose the right person through the proper HR process for recruitment and offer nobody special treatment. And we also need to recall that some agency workers don't want full-time, don't want to be on the books in the same way, because it suits their lifestyle to be able to pick and choose perhaps what shifts they do or when they do them through the agency, or perhaps they have alternative work also somewhere else, and so it balances or subsidises perhaps the income that they get. So there's a whole myriad of reasons, and I know through the audit committee extra work is being done to review that, so I won't stray from that into this committee, because that's for them to do. But I just think we need to focus that in the round in terms of agency, and there's a lot of, it's quite a complex area, so I think we'll leave that for them to pick up and work through. But I think it is right that, if there is an agency worker and they have that experience and knowledge, then it'd be great to have them working for us if they've already got that experience. So we'd encourage them and help them to apply, but no special treatment, I'm afraid. It has to be equitable for all.
Just to come back on that, Chair. Yeah, you're quite right, Adam. No, I was just thinking of, this scheme that Elliot is running. If these youngsters are not they aren't going to be agency, but if they're working for Elliot to come through a scheme, even if it's just on the waste disposal, it's giving them a job, and if they like it, well, then we can say bye-bye agency. We've got a lovely boy that wants to work here, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's open to any sex, boys or girls, across all of it. It's we're open and exclusive, inclusive to absolutely everybody. So anyone that wants to come through, and the apprenticeship schemes especially, or right to work is anywhere across the council where there is a place available. Elliot and his team work really closely across the poverty forum to make sure that we get those messages out where opportunities do set themselves up in order to come into the council. So could be in any sector, not just waste, that they work with, and again extend it to not only young people, but apprenticeship schemes can be for any age, especially after COVID, where perhaps people have fallen on hard times, had to let go from certain areas and struggling now to get employment. Again, we can work with with anybody across across the spectrum to try and, through employability, to get them into work anywhere across the council, or signpost them to other partners that we may work with, health boards, other councils, and so on. So it doesn't just have to be with us. It is that partnership approach.
Thank you both. Yvonne and then Joe Hale, please.
Thanks, Chair. Elliot, apologies before I ask my question, because I know I spoke to you and I heard your presentation before, but I couldn't remember the Kickstart. Is it just in-house, or are we?
No, Kickstart isn't just in-house. There's two parts to it. Initially, when the scheme went live in December, we applied to be a gateway, and what that meant was that we would speak to businesses in Swansea and establish, promote the opportunity for paid work placements. You know, it benefits the employer. They get, you know, they get a wage subsidy scheme, but also it helps the individual then with experience in that role. So we have external placements set up with a range of businesses, but we also now act as an employer as well as a gateway provider. So hence where we've set up the opportunities in corporate building services and waste, and we're continually looking across the council to set up new placements where possible.
For your gateway, are they fully booked, let's say, or can, if someone's interested, do they contact you or the council?
The opportunities are identified by basically we set up the placements on behalf of Job Centre. Job Centre will have they will promote the opportunities then to NEETs on their sort of caseload as such.
Okay.
I mean, we can also make participants aware on our projects of those opportunities, but they would need to go through Job Centre then to sort of access them. If that's right, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks both. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy. Just to give a bit of balance to Adam's comments on agency workers. I know you're smiling, Adam. See, I can see you, but you can't see me, can you? Yeah, a little bit of balance. In 30 years, or 26 years in the NHS, I've never known a low-paid agency worker to be happy to just be an agency worker. They've only entered the NHS to get full-time occupation. And a lot of that nonsense used to go on in London, especially after 1982, 83, with you-know-who at the helm of British society. So, and the British government. But I find it really odd that you're most probably in Swansea City County Authority, you're most probably going to find that the majority of agency workers will be low to semi-skilled, and they'll be at the lower end of the pay scales. And you maybe this is a place for you to ask this question in audit. But when we look at the higher end, we call the consultants, and we give them a really awful lot of money for short-term consultancies. I mean, if we're saying about equability, why don't you go out to an agency and get some high earners in as agency staff? Why are we bound to bring in consultants? We shouldn't really, should we? I did see something in audit talked about consultants, whether it was this time round or last time. I know locally in the NHS, we spent £1 million on Capita, and I've spoken to the very senior managers who said they showed us nothing. So, you know, if we're going to talk about equitability and giving everybody a chance, then let's bring some agency workers into the highest end of the council, into the senior positions within council. Why is it always the lower end that have to bear the burden? Or we can't afford to bring all the bin men in-house. We can't afford to have school catering staff on contracts. We can't afford. And I said it again, and I said it earlier about the police. It's ridiculous. You can't keep on conning people. We can't keep on being conned. It is affordable. We can do it. Why do we have to pay agencies? We don't have to pay agencies. And if we do have to pay agencies, let's have what you said. Let's have an equitable approach. Thanks, Adam.
Adam, no comment?
Yeah, I'm happy to come back.
Yeah,
and
leave it to audit.
Yeah, ultimately, it's the triangle, isn't it? There's those people at the top, but how many jobs do we have at the top that we could bring agencies in? And to be honest, agency is just another term. If we bring a consultants in, we would go to a consultancy firm, as you've already mentioned some. I won't mention any names because I don't want to be accused of advertising any. But there's lots of agencies out there where we do pull people in at a higher level, where they do specialists. And we call them consultants, we call them whatever. However, that is what they are. But look, audit are picking this up, audit are going through. Joe, let me say this one bit and then you can come back in. But I respected when you were talking, didn't say anything. I think just because it's being recorded, everybody needs that rite of passage to be able to hear it clearly. Because remember, this will be seen by public and we want to make sure that they can hear both sides of an argument and not talk over each other. So in terms of agency staff, audit are going to undertake a full review. That's what they've done, and they put that there in order to continue and look at what the challenges are. I'm not here to make that policy. That's over to you and the politicians. If you're not happy, then that policy would need to go through the appropriate steps on why we need to change that program that we currently have. So my recommendation would be go to the cabinet member for development and bring it through the right process in order to change. It's outside of my pay scale to be able to bring back the waste services in-house or housing or any other. So it has to go through that proper process. What I would say is that our agency, which is what we're talking about here, what Elliot's picking up, is that it is open to anyone in terms of that apprenticeship scheme and that aspect. If we want to stray into the other territory, and thanks Cyril for opening up that can of worms, we have to do it in the right forum. And actually that forum has already been discussed at two others. That it's not a policy development here. So that first of all is being discussed at audit and needs to be picked up and dealt with at audit and then recommended to a policy development committee if so desired, to the appropriate PDC in order to develop that as a work stream, which isn't here today. We don't have the evidence, we don't have the background, we have anecdotal and we have individuals. We need to look at it in the round, and if that's something we want to look at, then put it on the work programme and let's do it properly, thoroughly and appropriately in terms of a PDC programme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Joe, one comment. Joe?
Sorry, many people come into work as agency workers hoping for long-term employment. Okay, that was my thrust, and that maybe I didn't explain it very well. But at the other end of the organisation, we bring in consultants that are only here for a very short time, and they are very, very expensive. So low-paid worker, I need a full-time job. Tough luck, you're stuck with the agency, sometimes for 2 or 3 years. High-paid individual comes in, gets a rake of money, ta-da. I don't know whether they've done a good job or not. They certainly haven't picked up any bins in St Thomas.
Right, Joe.
Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you, thanks. We'll leave it with audit, and if it's referred back here, it's referred back here. Elliot, 2 quick questions for you before I leave you go. One is on the volunteers, which obviously we've discussed here numerous times. On individuals that have stepped up and really, really supported many services and many individuals, through real pressurized times. So with the volunteers, where most of them are already quite talented, but because of personal reasons, a lot have found themselves not actively seeking work. But maybe now, the passion is there because maybe they believe in themselves again. So with volunteers, what have we got, if we have got anything internally, to support individuals who have achieved and done so much for us, really, over the last 16 months? And the second one, just touching upon where we currently are with the prisoner scheme, because I am aware it's kind of depleted and we've done quite a bit of work to re-establish that programme. So just 2 quick general updates, if you can, please, Elliot. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose that in terms of volunteers, I mean, you know, there is that issue with some of our employability projects about eligibility and that sort of thing. But arguably, if they are, if you know, we could do some work around the volunteers to try and see what the employability projects could offer them in terms of perhaps lifelong learning opportunities, or could be ICT training or things like this, and try to help you know, help source employment potentially in that way. I don't know whether that's the sort of thing you were thinking of.
Can I just come in here? Sorry, it's Joanne Thomas.
Hiya, Jo.
Hiya, darling. I know Councillor Mandy Evans from years ago in Communities First, but I just wanted to mention with the volunteers as well, within our programmes, a lot of the programmes, they'll offer support if people are looking to become self-employed. So if we've got volunteers that maybe have been, you know, lots of things have been going on in the communities now where people have been cooking for people to support them. There's been like childcare to support people with childcare, because obviously people that are working in shops, their hours have increased over the COVID period. So there's been lots of these opportunities out there for people to sort of get themselves back into volunteering. And I'll show my screen because nobody can see my face right now. But yeah, so a lot more of these opportunities for people. Well, within the programs, we have got sort of training opportunities for people to develop these skills further, and possibly looking at self-employment opportunities, or looking at opportunities then going into work via those training opportunities. So maybe it's something through our engagement planner, because we are looking with Tim Moss, he's now managing the engagement team. We are looking to put together an engagement plan, and that's something maybe we could target, is offering that support to those that have actually done so much in their communities over the COVID period. I think that's something we could definitely look at. To be honest with Councillor Mandy. So yeah, that's definitely something we can look forward at, and I'll have a little chat with Tim about that as well.
I just feel, and probably, you know, a lot of members around this committee feel there's been so much passion in the communities, and I'm not talking about groups of people, I'm talking about individuals, Jo, who have really stood up to the par. You know, and left their post as a carer or a mum or whatever it might be, a dad, and just stood out in the community and delivered. And I really think we need to capture that, and maybe we need to learn from it. And, you know, that's all I have to say about it. But I wouldn't like to miss an opportunity where so much in so little time, it just kind of activated overnight. And they have done an excellent job. And without them, I think we'd be in a much different place. And so would so many individuals and families, you know, across the city.
Yeah, maybe if I have a little chat with Tim, maybe we can come up with some ideas for you. And if I can send them over to you.
Yes, thanks, Jo. Yeah, that's
even if
great.
we did some sort of I know we are employment based, but if we did some sort of like a sort of workshop in these communities where we can direct people to these different free opportunities for them in training or any sort of courses where that might develop those skills, and also for them to be acknowledged for their contributions in their community, to be acknowledged. I know that's quite hard during COVID, but if we can come up with some ideas and send them over to you, would that be okay, Mandy?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Jo.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you. I think we would appreciate that as a group. But yeah, anything is welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
Back to you, Elliot, regarding the prisoners scheme or the prisoners project.
Yeah, sorry, I think again that's something we perhaps need to explore a little bit more with Tim. I know Tim has been doing some work around that. He's kind of our expert on that.
Okay, right. Thanks, Elliot. Jo and then Terry. Joe?
Joe.
Is that a legacy hand? Or do you wish to contribute, Joe? We'll do Terry first, then we'll call Joe later. Terry?
Very interested in this business of helping people. I volunteered in a tenant movement for 25 years. What did that give me? It gave me an education right up to the line where I was able to set up my own business as an independent housing consultant and charging local authorities all sorts of prices. But that's something else. That was a scheme which I thought was very good. But at the same time, for the first 6 weeks I'm on the course learning about VAT and everything else, I was still paid my benefits. In other words, the housing benefit was being paid, and I was having my unemployment benefit. I don't know if that scheme's still in place, but quite a few people took it up, but it worked. I spent 2-3 years as an independent housing consultant, and I just started off as a volunteer, and I got a lot to say about people who volunteers and the community involvement. And we have lost a lot of people because of certain things that happen within this council, sadly. That's all I got to say on that.
Thanks, Terry. Joe? Is that a legacy hand, Joe? I think he's gone. Joe, it's the last call. Do you wish to contribute, Joe?
It's on one line.
Sorry, Joe's gone. So any more questions for the team, for Joe, Elliot, or for Nia? I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of this PDC to thank you all. Very interesting. And once again, we would probably welcome you back again, you know, for updates as we progress with the different projects and the different schemes. So thank you. Thank you all for your attendance today. It is very welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Mandy.
Hello, Paula.
What, Terry?
Is our meeting, the policy meeting cancelled at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, sorry?
I don't think so.
No.
No.
That's the 13th of October.
Right, guys, let's bring it back in line.
Thank you.
The next item is the recovery plan. I believe, Adam, are you here for that?
I am, amongst other things, it would appear. I thought I was only here for this item, but there you go.
You'll be here for the 6 o'clock meeting now.
Well, I'll only keep you for about another hour or so don't worry. It's you know. No, thanks again for the opportunity to come back. Marlon Dixon, Strategic Change Program Manager, is also on the call. And Marlon's going to take you through some of the points. But before she does, Mandy and I are going to meet later this week just to look at the certainly the recovery. We keep calling it the recovery plan, and it's really achieving better together. Recovery is only one small aspect of it. There's a lot more to it in terms of the 3 phases that we need to go through. And out of those 3 phases, obviously the first one is recovering from COVID. And as many of you, I'm sure, will watch the news, that great strides are being taken in terms of vaccinations, in terms of the precautions that we're all having to take. However, we keep seeing variants of interest and mutations of the virus. And the latest one that you'll be aware of is the Delta virus, which means that each time we think we're just about to step into that space of full recovery, it's one step back into fighting the disease. And so we remain in a position of response, not on full recovery. In that, we are still supporting the Track, Trace, Protect program and leading on that in terms of the workforce. We're supporting the vaccination program and the testing programs through Swansea Bay Health Board, and then fighting COVID along shoulder to shoulder with our businesses and our communities by offering them help and support through our various teams in environmental health, trading standards, and the wider authority. So So, you know, the picture keeps looking rosier, and then we keep having to step back a little way and fight all over again. That being said, you know, a point of really good action that the council's taken that the members may be aware of is that an All Wales vaccination certification service has been set up to try and stimulate and develop people that do need to travel, or people going to other countries, perhaps for work, for example, where a certificate is needed in order to gain entry, to show that you've had the 2 vaccinations and it's been 5 days and it is a need to travel. Then Swansea has led this on behalf of Welsh Government in setting up this programme. To date, we've done nearly 19,500 vaccination certificates. That's since the 24th of May, and we're utilising the team from the TTP programme, the Track Trace Protect. Just jumped onto mute there. Probably had enough of me talking, I know. And so we're using our existing teams in order to transfer over in order to be able to offer this. It was for an initial 8-week period, and we're just waiting to hear whether or not we need to continue that until March. So it's been a huge success getting that many through. It was set up in a week, and the team have done a brilliant job in terms of delivering on that. And that's across all Wales that we run that service. So, you know, that's no mean feat when you do 19,500 vaccination certificates from a standing start a week before the 24th of May. So you know, I just wanted to thank the team again through this forum for the really good work that they've done in terms of delivering that. In terms of the wider programme, Molly's going to give you some key parts to it in terms of the areas of development, the successes that we've had so far, and some of the next steps that we're going to go through. Marlon.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Chair. Thank you all for inviting me here today. It's very much appreciated.
You are welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to start off by talking about some of the successes that the programme has achieved to date. And one of them is appointing a new strategic programme change manager. So that was myself. I was appointed and started to work on the 1st of June 2021. It's very exciting. The whole recovery programme and the Achieving Better Together programme, it really is about what it says on the tin, which is Achieving Better Together. And it's quite exciting, and especially for the future of Swansea. So some of the programme achievements that we've had to date is obviously managing to appoint the new post. We've got a steering group which is set up with workstream leads reporting, and we've had 4 held to date. They've started in March, and we've held one every month. And that is the workstream leads reporting the success and the risks and the issues around their projects up to the steering group. That then feeds through to the board, and again we've got monthly board meetings. We've had 5 held to date. They started in February, and we've had one every month through until June. And the real success of those meetings is that the workstream leads are feeding up their detail from their projects through to the steering group. And because we've got representation from Councillor Andrea Lewis and from Adam and myself sat on both of these groups, there's a really good communication channel both ways. So it's not everything's been reported up to board. It's coming through the steering group. The necessary bits are going up to board, and then board are coming back down to the steering group. So there's a really good two-way conversation and two-way flow happening, which is really successful. And we've also got Welsh Audit Office sitting on the steering group. They've been there twice, and they sent apologies and had copies when they were unable to attend the most recent one. Again, it's great to see their representation there, and really giving some momentum and focus on the programme. We've been working hard, Adam and I, the last couple of weeks, looking at the Economic Recovery Fund, and we've developed a reporting and monitoring process for that, which we are due to take to board, the next board, which is the 14th of July, for approval. And that's a proper end-to-end process on the application right through to the monitoring and the spending of the and the reporting of the mitigations on the Economic Recovery Fund. We've got a reporting mechanism where we've added in some successes or a way in which the work streams can share successes as well as risks through the steering group and through to the board. Also reporting to board, we're reporting on the medium-term finance plan, and at the moment I'm glad to report that we've got no red risks on there for the current year. The transformation project, we've also got no high risks at the moment. We do have the corporate risk register, and what we've done recently with that is we've taken a good look at that, and we've really made sure that the risks are meaningful, that we're treating them in the right way, and that we've got good smart controls around them. And we've also then added those to the board dashboards for visibility and make sure again that they're being seen right the way through the programme, and we're reviewing those every month too. We've reviewed the governance and we've tweaked it ever so slightly because there is a really good strong governance that's in place. We have added in the success stories. So as of from the 1st of July, we're going to report on those and the corporate risks, and for visibility, we've now got the economic recovery monitoring going to be reporting through that same governance. We've got conversations happening at the moment, which is really ensuring that the new corporate plan developments and the Achieving Better Together programme are going to be really well aligned with each other, and to make sure that we're working in sync and not going off on separate paths. Some recent successes we've had through the work streams and being fed through. There's been a really good session with leadership held on the future workforce plans. There was a lot of feedback from there, and there's a lot more sessions with staff and other people due to happen on the workforce future plans. Staff from across the council have been invited to attend a discovery workshop, and that went extremely well. That was all about identifying processes which could be suitable for some automation in the future. And the bonuses of that is if we can transfer some of our processes that we've got in place across the council to automation, and that's then freeing up those staff members to do much more meaningful work with the end users and with our residents of Swansea, as opposed to sat at desks doing repetitive typing that we could be using the automation to do for us. We were very successful in our community strand. They had some funding that unfortunately due to COVID they were unable to spend in time, but they were successful in a request to have that funding rolled over. So that's been rolled over and is actually given us some finance available now for a regional volunteer post. And also from our economic and environmental strand, they've successfully put a bid in for levelling up. It was a very tight timeline, and we were fortunate in that we had a really good team again involved, and I've heard Paul Ralph mention today, worked all the hours and managed to get a bid in at the last moment, so fingers crossed that's going to go well. What next? So the next plans that we have in place are, we've got some meetings scheduled with our comms team and with IT, because we really want to communicate this programme and gain momentum for transformation across the council. And we want to be having as many conversations with as many people as we possibly can about what services and how they would see services delivered in the future. And I'm not just talking about next week or next month or next year. We're talking in 10 years time, what would you really like to see the council delivering, and how would you like to see them delivering it? And then we need to gather all of that information from as many people as possible to really help shape what our reshaping plans are going to be in the future. We're going to develop a transformation framework, which will help identify, we'll have the key themes identified in there, and the financial requirements that we're going to need to deliver the programme in the future, and so on, off the back of a lot of that stakeholder engagement that we do. We are going to be updating the scrutiny panel next month on the programme so far, and then October we're going to be going to audit committee to give them an update on the programme too. We've got stakeholder engagement scheduled with our leadership team again to talk about this, you know, what services do you really want to see, or what services do you really think that you're going to be delivering in 10 years, and how are we going to be delivering them? And we want those leadership members then to be going out and speaking to their staff, and the staff to be going out and speaking to their customers that they're dealing with day in, day out. And then we've got plans to review the medium-term finance plan future proposals. So that's going to be starting in July next month with directors. I suppose PDCs, what help would we like from you, and what support would we like from you? I'd quite like to come and speak to you to see what your vision for future services are. What would you expect the council to be delivering in the future? How would you expect us to be delivering those services in the future? And what mechanisms, you know, could you identify that we could widen this conversation with other stakeholder? And I'm talking about, you know, groups that we could go and approach, other organisations. How do we speak to the young people of Swansea? And just how could you really support us to do that piece of work up front, rather than go in and doing it ourselves and then going, this is what we're going to deliver. And I guess any feedback, any questions?
Chair, if I may, just before we take any questions, the sort of leading on from what Marlon was saying, there's kind of some key areas of work, really. We'll discuss this together, perhaps in more detail tomorrow. But there is the sustainable development policy that members will already be aware of previously, and that ties into what Marlon was saying about, you know, how do we provide those services for the future, and what does that mean? So, you know, not just looking for the short-term gains, but making sure we've got resources in all levels between now and the future. But we want to maybe look at changing that from a sustainable development policy into a well-being of future generations policy. And that could be a really nice step for the PDC in terms of creating a stronger, resilient community, but better, healthy prosperity, all the things that we've talked about previously and earlier on today. That ties us nicely into sort of what was being said earlier. I think Leslie was saying about the co-production policy, and that would be another really good piece of work that would help the recovery plan and the Achieving Better Together programme more centrally, certainly in terms of thinking about the socio-economic duty, and again, whether it's worth bringing perhaps a slight update to where we are with the socio-economic duty to committee, perhaps to a future meeting, and how we consult with the widest and most diverse of our population in Swansea, and supporting that wider conversation that Marlon was talking about with stakeholder groups, organisations, individuals, and especially those protected characteristics, BAME, and so on. How do we get all that into a consultation, but really co-production strategy? Feeds back into that wellbeing of future generations policy in terms of bringing those two areas together, so that, again, you know, already mentioned on the call today, is how do we bring our communities in at a very early part of this engagement, rather than consulting when we've done it. And again, so coming through that and looking at there. The other bit for me is the human rights city. How can we improve what we've got, and what policies do we have, and could we develop in order to support a human rights city, both within the council and lead the wider community and organisations that we partner with in order to deliver that? But perhaps looking more locally to the council, how can we improve that opportunity, perhaps speaking Welsh, to learn Welsh, perhaps give that advantage, what we were talking about earlier about, you know, people perhaps that do speak Welsh, maybe we can select them as a first choice in terms of a recruitment and selection process to continue that commitment through the Future Generations Act and Welsh Government's commitment to millions of new Welsh speakers. The final one for me then is really around the culture of the organisation, which we've gone through a massive change during COVID in terms of how we work. We were very much an office based, and now we're quite agile. And that takes a different kind of culture in terms of outcome focused rather than input. And how do we change and look at upskilling, leadership, mentoring our workforce today in this new hybrid world that inevitably we'll end up in? Because I can't ever see that we'll return back to where we were sort of 15, 18 months ago. So that's a new way of working in terms of that hybrid. So some of that will be picked up through other PDCs, but I think there is something around the culture as part of that that recovery and into transformation, about a learning organisation, a lean thinking organisation, that creative space, innovative space, that perhaps we also need to look at policies around how we can do and deliver that as we move forward. And then the final one for me is what you heard from Paul. But Paul, in terms of community safety, doesn't always have a home in terms of a PDC. And I think one of the things for me in terms of that future generations is we're talking about communities and safety of our communities and opportunity within our community. So I think it'd be right and proper in order for Paul to maybe bring some of his work streams here that would see some policy development in and around that community safety space. And I know there was a lot of passion from today, and that for me seems to be a nice fit with this this PDC in terms of driving some of those agendas and what the council can do both on its own and in partnership. So it was just to round off really to say I'm appreciative that the committee as yet hasn't had a major hand in achieving better together, but neither has any other committee because of the nature of the COVID response that we've had to been into. So we haven't really been fully able to look forward yet. We're now getting into that space. So all the things that I've just highlighted, we can now start pushing forward and putting onto that work programme. And we'll talk with the chair more tomorrow to see if we could shape those a little further, and happy to take you know, any questions, comments or positives from that today into that meeting tomorrow. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both. I would like to just touch upon where we've been in response to COVID. And, you know, once again, I know I keep echoing the same message, but there is a lot to be learnt from the way we actually supported our services, supported our staff, the way the staff actually stood up to the par and every one individual was counted. So when we talk about agile working, you know, a policy will obviously dictate probably different opportunities. And when we talk about future generations, you know, possibly it's suited some of our staff to be home with caring needs and other responsibilities. But for some, you know, they need to be in the workplace because of, you know, many different issues. So that policy is very tender to my heart when we talk about agile working, and we have discussed it on here numerous times. I think it's a positive move for us to be more involved, because as a committee, we have always wanted to be more involved. You know, we are recovery and future generations, you know, which indicates what we should be about and what policy that's delivered from here should be about as well. And yes, I understand, Adam, and we have had conversations. You know, I believe we're still very much in response. And yeah, we are kind of hinting on that recovery step. But every day is a changing mode, you know, and that's in our personal lives, our lifestyles, our workplaces, us as an organisation. Everything we do has got a potential to be different than what we were used to pre-COVID. So my plea is, and it always has been, little steps achieve more, but we need to work together. And I, for one, am, you know, when I look across the committee members here, our passion is very much to take our staff on board. Our staff are the council, you know, and as members, we appreciate the work that's being done, you know, from your level or Phil's level right down. And, you know, we've all worked with some excellent officers and staff and got to know them really personally through COVID. And we wouldn't have had that opportunity. But then they've got to know us as well. So it has been like a building stream within the organisation that we might not have had pre-COVID. So let's work together. Let's take our staff with us. Let's, you know, communicate. And this co-production is a big thing. you know, and Leslie always brings this agenda, and Leslie's got probably the biggest heart regarding co-production. But I thank her for that because she keeps it alive. But there's so much we can do. So, you know, let's work together. Let's get policy done, you know, as quickly as we can to protect us as an organisation and to protect the residents and the staff. But I thank you both, you know, for the update today, and you are welcome here. And Marlon, I must say, first time to meet you. Welcome on board. Congratulations on your new post. Probably we'll be nagging and knocking on your door constantly. But we appreciate, you know, your commitment and your offer to update us, you know, frequently as we go along. So I'll call in Leslie, you know, because Leslie's indicating to speak. Leslie?
Yeah, just a quick point, not really on what we've been talking about, but just to say, can we, when we revisit this, make sure it's further up the agenda? I feel for Marlene and Adam that you've sat through quite a long and intense meeting, and to try and listen to everything and take it all in after we've had quite a lot to cope with. I don't think it's fair on you, particularly. It strikes me the whole of this is massive and very important. So next time I want it far higher up the agenda, so you know, we're fresher to it and we can hear everything you say. And again, echo Mandy's sentiments. Welcome on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. And I totally agree with you. You know, this is about as we climb out or recover from COVID, and it should be on our agenda because this is what we're about. You know, and all the other agenda items, obviously, you know, are encompassed in what we do regarding policy and the delivery of policy. But I totally agree with you. So I suggest we have a session or a meeting dedicated, you know, just for Adam and his team and Marlon, because it is very important and it is what we are about, recovery in future generations. So I welcome that. And I totally agree with you, Leslie. So we will have a session or a meeting, you know, specifically dedicated to Adam and his team.
Well, this is what the title, as you say, of what this particular policy development committee is all about. So, yes, I would support you totally. Let's have a dedicated meeting.
Thanks, Leslie. Adam?
Yeah, thank you. I'd welcome that. That's really encouraging. I just wanted to give a little reassurance to just some of the comments made, just in terms of supporting the staff and them returning back into the workplace. We have done it on a case-by-case basis where anybody has not had the either ability to work from home, or perhaps their home life is not conducive to working from home. We have given them alternative spaces that they can work in. So we already have an agile policy that was brought in before COVID and has really been tested during COVID to a really good success. And lots of learning has come from that in terms of how we can continue to support the workforce in an agile world. Just to say, I've been more than happy to sit through all these kind of meetings because, you know, certainly the two with Elliot and with Paul are just as important as the recovery plan and achieving better together. You know, everything that they're working on is part of recovery, is part of achieving better together. Everything is about co-production, sharing knowledge, skills, workforce. So there should be no apology that they went before us. Absolutely right and proper that they do, and doing brilliant work between them all in order to make that happen. So what I don't want it to be seen is that there's lots of different pockets. Actually, you know, all those feed directly into the recovery plan. We have stronger communities, which Paul sort of sits on and feeds into. Elliot sits on again through the poverty and through the employability and learning and skills. So again, they all tie in together. So it's all really recovery and the Achieving to Better transformation program. So what you've had today really is almost that masterclass across a couple of work streams that are already happening. So So don't feel that you've left us to the end. All we're doing is mopping up, I guess, really, in terms of that bigger picture. And the one thing I think you were saying about those relationships, what we mustn't do is lose those relationships as we do return back to that whatever that new normal will be, that hybrid working, because the relationships that we've now built with both with members, with public, with residents, with communities, with businesses are going to be very, very important. And I'm not shy of coming forward anyway, but I've met new people that I would have never had an opportunity to meet because of COVID, and work with people that are not in the sector of which they normally work in, and opened up a new set of doors and a new set of avenues that we can explore as a council. So we need to capture those even further, and we've got into businesses that we would never have known potentially existed. They wouldn't be on our radar. So lots of great personal relationships that have been forged, and we mustn't lose them. But happy to do the bit of small steps. I think that's key. But I do think actions speak louder than words. So I think what we need to see now, the points that I listed, are kind of the areas that I think this committee now has a place and a position to move them forward. Whereas before that, we've been set in that response mode. So now that we're in that, okay, we can do something. I think that's what we need to program now moving forward, regular sessions that we can work on individual items. And we can't eat the whole elephant. We've got to do it a bite at a time. So what's the most important bits? And for me, that co-production thing is really the area that even if before we get on to, we'll have a designated one on recovery and transformation. No. Let's do co-production, because that will then feed all the other bits that we're going to work on. So if we could nail that one, everything that we work across the council should be through co-production, and it'll give us a better foundation on which to move forward. So there we are, my thoughts. Thank you, Chair.
Come on, slow. Thank you for that, Adam. And I think we are actually biting at the bit to get some progression. We've been established a long time, and there's quite a talent pool here, and we can work together and we can do what's best as we recover from COVID. So thank you both. We all appreciate it, and I do understand what you're saying, Adam. It's the links that click together to actually deliver success and to recover well successfully. We've got one city, we need to do the best for that city. So now we've got the last item, the work plan. Kate?
Hi, Amanda, you okay?
Hiya, Kate.
Okay, so at the moment then we've just got the topics, I think maybe might have changed a little bit after today. So it's just how we want to fit them in over the next sort of weeks. They're blank there to fill in on your agenda packs, the last page. So it's how you want to fill them in, how far ahead you want to go, or whether you want to sort of start with something and see where it takes you. It's up to you.
Transport will be sitting with economy and infrastructure, I believe. We will touch on certain elements, but just touch point. That will now be sitting with Councillor Henderson on economy and infrastructure, the transport, so that can come out. Joe, I'm going to ask you now, have we got a current update on the Youth Forum and where we are with the Youth Council, or is it still with CMT?
Right, I think there was some sort of discussion around that, but it might be best if we're thinking about sort of co-production in its widest sense, we might want to incorporate that within that co-production discussion.
Right, okay.
So, I mean, I can invite Katie Spendiff, I think, and Julie Gosney to attend a meeting, but that might be after we get a bit further with the co-production strategy.
Right, co-production. I would say co-production. Oh, sorry, Adam, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the Youth Forum, I think Part of the issue with the youth forum or whatever it's called as we move forward is where it best sits. Because it's a youth forum, that there is something around education and how it sits within education. This was the dilemma we had when it came to CMT. Was everybody is so supportive of it. It could sit in numerous different areas, and I think it's where it will best sit in order to be driven forward, and how that best shapes and looks. We already have a youth forum rather than a youth council. That there is already one in existence, so it might be better that one actually for now sits in education with a signpost back to here in terms of the progress that's happening and any policy that might come out of that could be developed as it comes through. But I think there's too many people trying to I think be in that space at the moment, and I think for me it's obviously the committee's decision. I'm only here to offer an opinion, is whether that sits, to be honest, for now better with them. And some of the bigger areas that I've talked on today, things like Human Rights City, culture of the organisation, that co-production policy for me should be our focus. And I think we may be distracted by other things. And if there's one thing for me that this committee, if we could nail it on co-production, would be the way to go. And I think leave those that are more aligned to the youth and the education forum where that would best sit. Let them crack on, but I certainly wouldn't want you to lose sight of it. But I think it's probably better that they steer it at the current time.
Leslie?
You've taken most of the words out of my mouth. I totally agree. I think the youth forum also sits slightly, well, not slightly, partly in people. So I think both the education and people are far more sensible place for it to be the lead. But we might come in to do complementary work to whatever they lead on. On the other hand, with co-production, I think we are the lead, and I would strongly recommend that we come back to it next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I've just penciled it in. So are we in agreement for 27th of July co-production? Yeah.
Yep.
I've had a request of Councillor Gibbard about the council consultation and engagement strategy for us to add it to our work plan, maybe 2 or 3 months down the road, and open up a bit of debate and obviously invite Councillor Gibbard so that we could do a bit of work on that. That's been a request from Councillor Gibbard within her profile as Cabinet Member for Communities. Yeah. So we do co-production. Sorry, go on.
Chair, I was just going to come in if I may. That'd be really helpful. Again, with the socio-economic duty, obviously that came in at the end of March. And that our engagement and consultation strategy will need to take that into account. So that would be quite timely to pick that up around the September-October time would be really good.
Well, we've got one meeting scheduled now, Adam, for end of July. We've got then obviously nothing diarised for August. So if we do co-production in July and then we take into October that request, the council consultation and engagement strategy, and put it in September's PDC. And then we've got, I'm quite interested in the community safety, you know, and Paul and his team. If it is, you know, the right PDC for it to sit at. You know, I understand he's working with other PDCs, but community safety, you know, and as we do recover, probably there's a lot of lessons learned in community safety as well. So it is very much, to me, you know, sitting quite tightly with recovery. So we could put that into September as well, if that's okay. So
Chair, if I may again, just in terms of if we looked at the Future Generations Act in relation to creating stronger, resilient communities, and look from that focal point from Paul's area, that way it doesn't stray onto any of the other PDCs, because this is the Future Generation, so it picks it up from that aspect. There will be the Sustainable Development Policy coming back to this committee. That I know will be there'll be an approach to you soon, Chair. So again, it would make sense to move that from sustainable development to a well-being of future generations policy, showing how we embed that well-being of future generations across Swansea in all we do and the policies and so on. So again, if that could be seen somewhere towards the back end of the year, perhaps October, November time, maybe that would be good. And the only other comment I've got is with the co-production, I think it'll take more than one meeting.
Yeah.
And I'd almost look at July as a scoping. What do we mean by co-production? It'd probably be useful to get social services who have a really good model that they introduced it and let them talk to us in that first one about what they did and what the tools that they utilized and almost a presentation from social services in that, and then a scoping for us about, well, what does that really mean, and then setting a work program that may take us 2 or 3 meetings to get through that sort of co-production information.
When we've previously discussed this, we've spoken about a workshop, and I think a workshop might be a good way to tease out certain elements of this as well. I know Leslie got a passion to have a workshop on co-production, so we could slot in a workshop in between 2 sessions, and probably collate quite a bit from that workshop as well. Yeah,
I think that makes good sense.
So workshop. David, did you want to come in? Did you want to speak? You're on mute. No? Okay. Okay. Right, so we've got co-production for July. We'll have a workshop in between, and I would say we need to be probably extending it to September as well. And then we got 26th of October, then future generations, well-being and the future generations, because what we had previously, employability, community, volunteering, we've touched on that, resilience fund, which obviously is being brought here now. Further update on recovery plan or the co-production. So regarding what we were aspiring to put onto our work plan, we're almost there. So it's the new items that need to be added. So we know what we're doing up until the end of September. I suggest we leave it there, and then by in July's meeting, then we can progress another 3 months probably. I don't know what's the feelings of the meeting of the members.
Chair, sorry, I know Joe's had her hand up for a little while. I think she wants to come in on a few points.
Sorry, Joe.
No, it's okay, Adam. Please go ahead, and I'll come in after you. It's only a quick point.
Thanks, Joe. It was just one more consideration that we may need to look at, and that is the recovery from EU exit. At the moment, it's all been masked on the back of COVID, but we are, we're starting to see things that are happening, and disaggregating away from what's COVID and what's EU. I think as we go through the next few months and hopefully recover and the Delta variant doesn't take over. It may be something again towards the back end of the year. We just want to be mindful and maybe just do a session on in terms of that recovery of what's happened. Is there any policy? Is there anything coming out of that we may need for a council? Some of it obviously will be picked up through others in terms of economy and so on. But I think as this PDC is recovery, we ought to just have an eye on that and see, is there anything? And again, Richard and myself can probably come and do a bit of a overview, what's happened since, and where are we, just for committee. I think that'd just be useful to have that in there. We mustn't lose sight of the EU exit.
Are we looking November for that, Adam?
Yeah, I think.
Or a bit later.
So. I think let's put it in for November, but no, it could move depending on where we go with COVID. If everything gets released in July, then we'll start to see within a matter of weeks what EU exit will have in terms of issues. So I think let's put it for November, but it could be a moving feast. So if we're allowed that a bit of flexibility.
And the consultation, the council consultation engagement strategy, I take it there's a bit of work being done elsewhere, because obviously the request has been to bring it here now.
Yeah, there is some work being done by Lee and Rian and his team. So yeah, that is there, but whether it's quite ready, I'm not sure, Chad. I need to check where that is.
We'll discuss where it goes in the work plan the next meeting then.
Yeah, thank you.
So Kate, sorry Kate, probably I've confused you. And Joe, thanks Joe. Do you want to speak? Sorry.
Yeah, no, just very quickly, Mandy, thank you. Just to say, it might be helpful going forward to think about possibly writing some letters to the Cabinet member from time to time. It doesn't have to be after every meeting. It's just that I think reflecting on the role of the Policy Development Committee in terms of policy development, is sometimes you can come up with some recommendations to look at revising policies or developing new policies without going through the process of starting a complete new policy from scratch. I won't go into detail, but some of the other PDCs that have started policies from scratch, taking it through the council process. It's quite a long drawn out process, and we've had quite a lot of discussion about co-production already. And I think if we'd got some of that down in a letter, we could have then sort of helped move the discussion forward without losing sight of what's been said. Like I say, it doesn't have to be done after every committee, and sort of it doesn't need to be necessarily too onerous, but it just helps sort of push things forward.
Yeah, thanks for that, Joe. Probably that is productive, and as you say, probably it would by Leslie, probably it is a way of keeping certain agenda items alive, and just touching on that policy.
Yeah,
I agree with him.
Yeah,
can I have a chat with you, Joe, about that?
Yeah, I can certainly help with you. It wouldn't take me too long to do for you to then approve and go talk through the committee. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Kate?
There you go. So if we concentrate on co-production in July then.
Yeah.
And I've got down penciled in council consultation engagement strategy, community safety and co-production, but we can confirm those up in July's meeting perhaps. And I've got October, we've got the Sustainable Development Policy turn into the Wellbeing Future Generations Policy. And then November, the recovery from EU exit. But again, we can discuss these month on month then.
No, thanks for that, Kate.
Okay.
Anyone want to add anything else? I'd like to say thank you for your patience. It's been a long meeting. But I think we've achieved a lot today, and there's a lot more understanding on where we are with certain agenda items. And we are progressing, but thank you, Joe and Adam and Kate and Caroline and everybody who's here supporting us. And Marlon, thank you very, very much. Thanks, members. I'll see you at 1800, is it? So take care all. It's 16:32, Kate. I call the meeting closed.
Thank you, chat. Stop the recording.